In one of my earlier videos, I touched on about the FRA and about OTMAs, and I shared a good part then, but there's a little bit more I want to add to that. When it comes to your OTMA, your one-time movement approval, there are guidelines that the FRA has that we need to follow, and it explains it all out. You can go on the internet and get them, and I recommend that you do, and that you print them out, and that you keep them in an FRA binder. You can go to railroads.dot.gov, and you're looking for publication H as in Harry, M as in Mike, G as in George, dash 127. It's OTMA procedures. And here it is. There's 12 pages to it. I keep mine for reference. I keep them in a 3-ring binder that's just for the FRA, and then everything I put in there, I put it inside a plastic sleeve. And then you get in here, and when you look this up, the most current one that they have out there is dated October 7th, 2014. I just checked it again this morning to double check, make sure I had the most up-to-date one, and this is still the most up-to-date one. The last revision that I was able to find was a revision from 2012, so apparently this is still the one that they follow. There's also, if you find yourself in the unfortunate position to where you are the one responsible for filing an OTMA, and I really hope for your sake that it's not all up to you, and if there's people expecting it all to be up to you, I would encourage you to try to find somebody to help you out, simply because there's just a lot, and we already have enough to do our basic job. And so adding something else like the OTMA, and we ideally want to file it one time and not have to go back and make amendments because we forgot to add something. You can go to safety.data.fra.dot.gov, and you can find an OTMA application, and you can fill that on electronically. And of course, you'll have to print it out and save it for your records because, as you probably have figured out by now, all bureaucracies exist in a paper world. Their world is paper. Everything about them is paper. If it's not on paper, they don't know what to do. So keep everything and document everything, and I encourage you to do that. And 2 or 3 years back, a friend of mine shared a rough outline that his FRA inspector recommended that he keep on hand, and I've since followed that. And I would encourage you to create and keep and maintain a 3-ring binder just for the FRA. Because the FRA, like any other government inspecting agency, they're going to come in and they're legally allowed to ask us for information within a reasonable time frame, and everything. I mean, they can come in and they can ask and they can demand that you produce stuff immediately, but we still have some time to produce things, and we also don't want to make the mistake of giving them everything that we have. It's none of their business. If they ask to see a particular part of our operating procedures, that's all they get. And we shouldn't. We should have, I would also recommend that your operating procedures be kind of broken up if possible. I have my basic SOPs. Then I have them broken up into subcategories, and then I have my other amendments, attachments that I've got to supplement that. They're all in separate binders. So if somebody says, hey, I want to see your rail yard safety procedures, well, I'm just going to hand them the rail. They're not entitled to see anything else. They're not entitled to see everything that I've got. It's not being obstinate. It's not being difficult. It's a matter of we have to cooperate with them, but at the same time we have to protect ourselves. And so that's why we watch what we say. Don't volunteer too much information. Just pay attention and give them what's reasonable and prudent so that they can do their job efficiently and effectively. And part of us doing our job efficiently and effectively is sharing what's required and no more. And so what I've got, I'd like to share with you. I'm going to move this here. I have a FRA binder. It's kind of thick. I need to update it. I need to go with one a little bit thicker. Slowly been adding things. Some of this may not be required where you are, and you may think some of it's a little too much, but what happens when my inspector shows up, all I do is I hand him that binder that has everything that ever in the past he's requested to see. And plus I continually update and I revise my stuff to try to keep it as accurate and as up to date, so that when he sits here, he can just open that up and he can review it. And if he has a problem or a question, it's right there and I can now address it. So to give you a breakdown of what I put inside my FRA binder is, first and foremost, my Hazmat Certification registration. They always want to see that, and it has to be renewed every 3 years. So I just put that up right in the front. And then training for all current employees. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it has to be job function training and job specific training, and then everything that goes along with it. So whatever you can prove, trainings that you can prove, throw it in there. If either you or somebody that works for you is ex-military and they took training and that would qualify, security training, anything like that, I just throw it in there. I would just throw it in there, just add it in there. Even if technically it may be expired, because we have to have a refresher every 3 years on things. But if the guy working for me's got it, add it. Just put it in there. And then you just break it down in each little area. And then usually what I do is I print out a little Word document that's got a list of all of the certificates and stuff that you'll see. And then that way they have it. That way I don't have to actually bring out any individual employee binder. It'll just have it all right there for them. A car safety checklist. I have that, and is it an excerpt from my SOPs? They want to know, how do you do whatever it is that you do when it is in relation to rail cars? How do you inspect them? How do you handle them? How do you secure them? And so like I said, I just pull excerpts out so that I'm not handing them all of my SOPs and say, well, it's right in there, or hand them all of my SOPs and then have me flip it to the appropriate area. Because once you hand them that, they now have the right to go through all your SOPs and go fishing. And then our overall safety procedures. What are our safety procedures? Because we're required to one degree or another to ensure the integrity and the safety of these rail cars. Well, you have to write that out. And you write that out and then you put it in there. And one important thing that I did not know about, I got schooled on this, fortunately in a very good way, is that your written safety procedures, your written emergency response procedures, are your proprietary information. They are not to leave your office. They are not to leave. They are not, if somebody comes in and says, hey y'all, my name is so-and-so, a representative of the EPA or Department of Homeland Security, and we're doing an exhaustive background check or whatever BS they're slinging, we need you to send us a copy of your safety procedures to make sure they're up to date. Don't email them. Don't forward them. They are yours. They have to stay in your possession. I know another man, he's in a different field than propane, but he keeps his emergency response plans in a folder, and whenever he goes home, he takes them from a copy of them from work so that they're always with him. So if there's ever an accident at his facility, he can always have that. As to whether that's up to code or not, I don't know about legal, if legal's the right term or not, but if that's appropriate or not, I'm not an authority on that. But I have been warned that you are not to electronically transfer a copy of your security procedures or your emergency response plans to anyone. They need to stay inside your office, and they need to stay in a secure location. I ended up having to go out and buy a metal locking cabinet so that I can keep it locked up. It depends, is that completely necessary? Well, it does say it needs to be secured and needs to be put up. And it just depends on whoever it is that comes and inspects your place as to how strictly they interpret that. But that was my response. And after safety procedures, I also include excerpts from 49 CFR Part 174, Section 174. I include, I print out parts 3, 9, 14, 24, 26, 59, 67, parts that pertain, that are job specific for what I do. Is not required to have it, but what it has proven in the past is it is a good talking point with me and my FRA inspector. He'll come in and say, well, what about your procedures in doing this? And what about that? And it's like, well, okay, here's what it says, and this is what I got, and I go and refer to it. And then then it's just a talking point. It's a point where we can go now and carry the conversation forward instead of, just kind of a verbal back and forth. It's something concrete we can both refer to. And if he's got, if he references something else that says, then I can write that down and I can go and find those parts and add it to it. Because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that as much as humanly possible, we are complying with established federal regulations. And I've said it, or I think I said it in another one, there's one of the lies we are told as human beings is that ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, that is a flat out lie. It's from the pit of hell and it smells like smoke. There are so many regulations, codes, and laws out there that we are just buried in them. And it is impossible for any one individual citizen to fully know and fully understand everything that pertains to us. So they may want to beat us up with that. But the fact is we acknowledge our basic ignorance. Yes, I don't know it all. But you know what? I'm printing out and I'm applying everything that I find out. I do incorporate it into my business, into my practices. So, yeah, all right, spank me. I'm not perfect. But if I'm actually doing this and you can show me something else, it's been my personal experience that they are far more willing to work with us if we have that attitude and we have, it's not like I'm going to roll over and immediately agree with anything he says or anybody else says. It's just not my nature. But if you can show it to me and you can prove it to me, well, then I really have no other choice but to comply. And then after that, with Norfolk Southern, originally I had to apply for a residue car, hazmat residue car rerouting. What that amounts to is that as I release my cars, I don't have to always give it a destination. Norfolk Southern will always automatically reroute it back to wherever it came from. Well, I just have a copy of that original application. Not exactly necessary. My FRA inspector's seen it once. He's never referred to it again, but it's like they want to have some assurance that I basically understand and you understand what happens to our cars when we release them. That's really what they want to know. How much do you know? How much do you understand? And then how much of that understanding do you apply in the actual execution of your job? Now, also, I have entered in my emergency response plans. Essentially, what are you going to do in what ifs? And one of the things we have to do when we inspect is the possibility of an IED, some sort of a bomb. Like I said earlier, I don't know what one looks like, but I still have to have some sort of a plan in place in order that if I find something that's questionable, what do you do? And if something rises to a serious threat level, as you define it, what are you going to do? What are your basic steps? Write it out. And this is where it's so vitally important to reach out to as many people as you can and try to see, what did you do? How did you do it? I am deeply indebted to the people that have helped me out. I would tell you there's specific names, but like I said, I'm keeping my place and all this stuff kind of generic, simply because where I am and what in my company and all that's immaterial to the value that I think these videos have. But to you who have helped me, you know who you are. I am personally deeply grateful. Thank you for helping me be better at my job. And then another thing that the FRA wants when they come and do your annual inspection or a random inspection is they want copies of your random copies of empty hazmat weigh bills. So what I've done is I've established that, and it's on my maintenance calendar, that every quarter, every 3 months, I go back and I randomly pull 5 empty hazmat weigh bills, just 5 random ones over the last 3 months, print them out, put them in my FRA binder, throw out the ones from the previous quarter, that way they're all in here. And I just keep it random, simply because the inspector wants, and if you don't do it, he'll more than likely ask you, and he'll just ask you to randomly print some out. They want to make sure that the weigh bills are properly formatted, they have proper phone numbers, everything about that. And my question, and they said, well, so if you find an issue, you can call the railroad and correct it. And it's like, well, hell, it's not my way bill. What am I going to do? Call on the phone, email, fight them? I'm not going to do that. The one thing I will do, if I ever do find a discrepancy, is I will email Norfolk Southern Customer Service and I will tell them what I found and ask for clarification. Leave it at that. And then I include my OTMA guidelines, and there's 12 pages on that HMG-127. So I just print out all 12 pages, put them in sleeves, and put them in my binder. And then very lastly, in my FRA binder, I keep all the information, print out the emails, of everything about all the cars I've OTMA'd. And eventually I'm going to get enough of these OTMA cars that I'm probably only going to keep probably the last 3 years of OTMA cars. I just saved the emails showing that I sent the car in, that everybody agreed it's going to be OTMA, got to go to a shop. And then in the past, they would always have to email me a destination, and I would have to go through the whole process with Norfolk Southern to reroute that car. Well, it's all been streamlined now, so the people who file my OTMAs for me, thank you for that, those that you would get involved in it. They also do the routing. They set the routing up with Norfolk Southern, and because Norfolk has redone streamlined their whole process, it is quick, it is easy, leaves me out of the loop. As soon as I officially release the car, its rerouting kicks in, and when my local comes and pulls, the car goes right where it's supposed to. So I'm going back to that, encourage you to create a 3-ring binder, keep your FRA stuff, ask your FRA inspector if there's anything in particular they would like to see, or if there's something they really don't care about of what I mentioned, they don't really want to see it, and then delete it out. And when it comes also to documentation, there's one other thing that I am not as well versed in, and that's OSHA stuff. One thing I do keep, that I have a little binder on, are my safety data sheets, material safety data sheets. We hired a consultant, and this man was really good. He helped us out a lot with our OSHA compliance. And when it comes to these safety data sheets, hold on. Telemarketer scammer. And when it comes to our safety data sheets, I was always under the impression they had to be kept in a physical copy, always readily accessible to any employee, anybody here on site. He did say that they can be stored electronically, as long as everybody that works here has the same access to wherever it is you save them electronically on whatever computer, whatever device you have set up, as long as they can readily access it. The only time it becomes an issue would be during a power failure. So if you were in the middle of doing your job and you had a power failure. So what I did to comply with that is I created a smaller safety data sheet 3-ring binder, and in there I keep just the basics. Propane, of course, ethyl mercaptan, nitrogen, I don't know, probably 10, 14 other things that are basic things that we would do, because you think about it, in a power failure, the number of things we're going to do really diminishes. So I keep some of what I would consider the more relevant. I keep in here, everything else I keep online. All part of documentation. So even if I'm doing it wrong, at least I'm doing it. And that goes a long way. And then also when it comes to the FRA, to OSHA, to your SOPs, I strongly encourage that a minimum of once a year you review everything, and then you document the date in which you reviewed it. As to whether you made any changes or not is irrelevant in the fact that you reviewed it, because that's one of the things that you'll get asked. If you file EPA work or any other government reporting agency, they want to know what you got, and then how often did you last review it and updated it if necessary. You can also put on your maintenance calendar that you're going to do it once a quarter or once every 6 months. But whatever you decide to do, just write it down. Just put it down that you are going to do it. And then somewhere, somehow document the fact that you reviewed it. Like I said, even if everything is really good and there's nothing substantive you need to change, just write down that you reviewed it, because they want to know that. They want to know that you are actively reviewing your stuff, that it's not just something that you did to satisfy them once and then you just ignore it. So it's one of the things that we grow into. We grow into it. I hate this stuff. I don't like any of this stuff. I like to do my job. Unfortunately, this is a negative downside to my job. So I do my best, just like you do, and just like you will continue to do. So I want to encourage you in that, and take small steps, take it, apply it, and improve by it. Thank you.